Have you ever wondered what separates an ordinary man from a man who builds empires? It's not capital, it's not luck, and it's definitely not a degree. The difference lies in a conversation. A conversation that transformed a young reporter into one of the greatest authorities on wealth of all time. Napoleon Hill was invited by me, Andrew Carnegie, for a simple interview. But what he received was a mission, and that mission could be your calling today. You see, most people waste their lives waiting for a sign, for the perfect moment, for a magical blessing that will transform everything at once. That doesn't exist. What does exist is the decision to stop being a spectator and become an architect. Hill understood that, and you will too, because today I'm going to take you behind the scenes of that conversation. I'm going to show you the lesson that changed the destiny of a man and can, if you have the courage, change yours. You are about to dive into the origin of one of the most powerful principles ever formulated, the defined purpose. But this idea was not born from theory. It was born from the brutal practice of business, from the furnace of industry, from the cold analysis of thousands of men who failed while a few built empires. When Hill came to me, young, educated, and curious, I saw him as an opportunity, not for me, but for the world. I knew I would die soon, but the formula for success could not die with me. So I looked into that young man's eyes and gave him the most difficult challenge a man could ever receive. Would you be willing to devote 20 years of your life, without pay, to discover the science of wealth? Hill hesitated for a few seconds, but then something sparkled in his eyes. He said yes. And in that moment, the most important pact in the history of personal development was sealed. And why does this story matter to you? Because the same pact is being offered to you now. The difference is that you don't need 20 years. You just need focus. And you need to mean it. In that conversation, I revealed a pattern to Hill. A silent code that truly wealthy men followed. It wasn't a secret, it was overlooked. They knew exactly what they wanted. They had a goal so clear, so burning, so non-negotiable that no crisis, no rejection, no obstacle could divert them. Most people live like a boat adrift, but great men, they are locomotives. They dig a track in time and follow it to the end, whatever the cost. The name for this is defined purpose, and that was the first pillar I passed on to Hill. There is no point in accumulating knowledge, books, courses, catchphrases, if you don't know your destination. And I'm not talking about vague desires like I want to be happy or I want to be rich. That's smoke. I'm talking about a strategic decision. Something so specific, so powerful, that you can put it on paper, read it aloud every day, and move your entire life toward it. When you discover your defined purpose, you cease to be a slave to circumstances, you begin to take charge. And sooner or later, the universe responds to those who take charge with faith and action. But don't stop there. Hill also learned another hard truth. The world does not reward knowledge. The world rewards the use of knowledge. And there is only one way to use what you learn, by applying it with relentless discipline. Discipline is not an option. It is a duty. The men I admired, promoted, and enriched in my business were not the most brilliant. They were the most consistent. They were the ones who did what needed to be done every day, even when they didn't feel like it, even without applause, even without immediate results. And here is one of the truths that few have the courage to face. Most people fail not because of a lack of ability, but because of an excess of distraction. Hill understood this quickly. And if you want to change your life, you need to understand it too. Wealth begins in the mind, but it is consolidated in routine. That is where the secret lies. Every transformation begins when you stop reacting to the world and start shaping it with your decisions. That day, I also taught Hill the value of surrounding himself with the right people. I told him bluntly, never tolerate mediocrity around. You never allow your vision to be contaminated by those who don't have the courage to dream big. And that still holds true. Do you want to change your life? Start by changing your associations. Because the man who walks with giants learns to walk tall, but those who surround themselves with cowards soon become accustomed to crawling. So stop seeking approval from those who don't live the life you want. Stop justifying your dreams. And start acting like the leader you were born to be. Hill wrote it all down. Every word, and you should do the same. It's not just about learning, but about absorbing until you become it. Because true learning is not in what you hear, but in what you incorporate. Now listen carefully. What makes this lesson so powerful is not that it worked for Hill or me. It's that it still works today, with anyone who has the courage to apply it, including you. It doesn't matter how old you are, what your past is, what mistakes you've made, or what limitations you have. A definitive purpose doesn't require privilege. It requires decision. And if you have that, you'll have access to a power that most people never experience. Clarity, and clarity is the beginning of every empire. It was with clarity that I built the steel industry. It was with clarity that Hill wrote Think and Grow Rich, and it will be with clarity that you will change your destiny. But only if you are willing to burn your bridges, eliminate your backup plans, and bet everything on the only life you have. If you've made it this far, it's because something inside you recognizes that you can't put it off any longer, that the time has come to stop surviving and start building. And if that flame has already begun to burn, I say, protect it, feed it, because the world will try to extinguish it with distractions, doubts, and empty promises. But if you stay focused, if you keep up the pace, nothing will be able to stop what is about to happen. Hill understood from the first meeting that this was no ordinary invitation. It was a baptism, a call to abandon ordinary life and embark on a journey of inner and outer construction. What he received there was not a tip. It was a map, and on that map the first coordinate was clear. Eliminate all doubt, because doubt is the poison of action. And where there is hesitation, there is no empire. You need to understand that success does not happen by luck. It is shaped with your hands, with sweat, with mistakes, with unpopular decisions, with sleepless nights when all that remains is you and your vision. And that is why, when teaching Hill, I insisted on one principle: never start anything without being determined to see it through to the end. Most people stop halfway not because they lack ability, but because they never truly committed to their destiny. Commitment is more than an intention. It is a pact with your soul. And it is that pact that changes everything. Hill learned to write his purpose in permanent ink in his mind. Every day he read, reread, visualized, and every day he took a step, even if imperceptible, toward his purpose. That is the secret of the great, silent consistency. They don't announce it, they build it. And you need to understand this urgently. No one is coming to save you. No one will come to push you. You are alone at the beginning. But if you keep going, if you keep the faith, allies will appear. Hill only met the biggest names of his generation because he first proved to himself and to the universe that he would not back down. That he was willing to walk the entire journey, even if no one saw him. That is what separates ordinary men from legends. Now listen carefully. I revealed to Hill that success never comes before inner transformation. That outward prosperity is only a reflection of mental wealth. I told him, the man who wants to get rich must first master himself. For he who does not rule his own mind is a slave to his environment. And that truth has never changed. Do you want to build freedom? Start by controlling your thoughts. If you feed fear, you will live surrounded by scarcity. If you feed doubt, you will reap uncertainty. But if you plant conviction and practical faith, your mind becomes a powerhouse, and everything around you begins to reorganize to align with that frequency. The mind is the first factory of wealth. But like any factory, it needs maintenance, direction, and design. And above all, it needs a relentless engineer. That engineer is you. So don't tolerate weak thoughts. Don't negotiate with inherited beliefs. Hill learned to watch every idea that entered his mind, like a banker watches every penny that enters the vault. And that's how you should act. Because every thought you allow to stay builds your destiny. This is not a metaphor. It is a mechanism. And only those who understand this mechanism become truly free. In our conversation, I also talked about the power of focused imagination. I told Hill that all great men visualize before they achieve. They see what does not yet exist, as if it were already real. And they don't just see it, they feel it. They live the future they desire internally, until it is no longer a desire, but an inevitability. And that is the second pillar that he engraved in his mind. Visualize clearly, repeat with faith, act with precision. Many laugh at this. They call it cheap self-help. But these same people remain poor, lost, frustrated, jumping from one promise to another. Meanwhile, those who master the art of visualizing with purpose are shaping companies, movements, legacies. There is no magic. There is a science behind the focused mind. And Hill was the first to systematize it based on the greatest achievers of his time. But I didn't stop there. I taught him that no man rises alone. No matter how visionary he may be, he needs allies. Men and women who share the same vision, who reinforce the same values, who don't back down when the going gets tough. I called this principle mastermind, and it is the third pillar, a mental alliance between people who challenge each other to grow. And if you're trying to do everything yourself, stop, you're wasting energy. You need to surround yourself with minds that elevate yours. You need strategic advice, honest confrontation, and partnerships that drive you forward. Hill understood this so deeply that, in every chapter of his life, there were strategic names by his side. He wasn't looking for sycophants, he sought builders. And you should do the same, so ask yourself, who is around me? Who inspires me to act with more strength, more clarity, more purpose? And if you don't have strong names to mention, it's time to review your circle, because no empire was built among neutral people. You need soldiers of vision, allies to your cause, people who challenge your mediocrity and demand your best. That is the true mastermind. It was this structure that Hill carried for decades, a defined purpose, a disciplined mental mastery, and an alliance of superior minds. With that, he interviewed over 500 millionaires. He identified the patterns. He codified the laws. And he gave the world the most practical and powerful philosophy ever written on prosperity. But it all started there. In that conversation, with a decision, an unconditional acceptance of personal responsibility for one's own destiny. And that's what I want you to understand. Everything can change from now on. Not tomorrow, now. But only if you stop blaming circumstances, the past, the people around you. Only if you look inside yourself with brutal honesty and ask, what is my purpose? And what am I willing to sacrifice for it? Because success comes at a price. But it is infinitely less than the cost of mediocrity. And that price is paid in daily decisions, in difficult choices, in silent sacrifices, but above all, it is paid with faith. Not religious faith, but practical faith. That unshakable conviction that if you act every day toward what you want, the universe will surrender. Sooner or later, everything bows to disciplined persistence, and if you've made it this far, then I have an invitation for you. An invitation I made to Hill, and now I make to you. Declare in the comments below what your defined purpose is. Not for me, for you. So that your mind can begin to align. So that you can start, today, writing the first paragraph of your new chapter. Hill understood, as few do, that the human mind is the real battlefield. The war is not out there, in the market, in the competition, in the economy, ... The war is within. And most people lose that war every day without realizing it. Because they wake up already defeated. They think small, act small, react to the world with fear, and sabotage themselves with sophisticated excuses disguised as logic. And that's why I told him, with all the coldness of someone who knows the human soul, you will never win on the outside what you have not yet won on the inside. That sentence was not advice. It was a warning. A warning that the man who wants to transform the world around him must first restructure his own internal foundation. And that restructuring begins with absolute self-control. Emotions are tools, masters, and as long as your emotions are in charge, you will be just another puppet reacting to the tides of the day. Self-control is what separates leaders from followers. It is what allows you to stay focused when everything falls apart. It is what keeps a man silent when pride wants to shout. And it is what decides, in practice, who is ready to carry the weight of wealth. Hill immersed himself in this principle, and he soon understood that prosperity is not about accumulating, it's about managing. Managing thoughts, time, energy, relationships, money, and this ability to manage begins with a simple gesture, choosing with a cool head what deserves your attention. I taught Hill that attention is the new gold, and that the man who wastes his attention on nonsense, drama, gossip, excessive entertainment, that man will never build anything worth remembering, because attention is the beginning of creation. What you focus on expands, and what you ignore fades away. That's why great men are obsessively selective with their time. They treat their schedule as sacred ground. They don't engage in useless conversations. They don't watch just anything. They don't read just anything. They don't expose themselves to just any influence. And they don't give space to people who don't share their vision. They protect their mental territory as if it were a safe, because it is, and you need to do the same. If you're tired of starting and stopping, of having glimpses of greatness that quickly fade away, know this. The problem isn't a lack of strength, it's a lack of armor. You're too exposed, too connected, too distracted. And as long as your mind is in chaos mode, you'll never have the strength to build order. I told Hill something he never forgot. A man's empire begins in his morning. That's right. The way you start your day defines the architecture of your mind. That's why the rich have rituals. Leaders have sacred routines. And the weak, they wake up with their cell phones in their hands and their heads full of digital garbage before they even brush their teeth. Hill understood that every morning was a fresh start, a code to program the unconscious. And so he began writing his goals as soon as he woke up. He affirmed, visualized, breathed deeply, and only then opened his mind to the world. Do you want to change your life? Change your morning. What's more, start writing. Write down your goals every day. Read them aloud. Rewrite them with brutal clarity. Make it a ritual. Because paper has a power that few appreciate. When you write something down, you are taking it out of the abstract and making it real. You are giving shape to the invisible. And the universe responds to those who have the courage to be specific. Hill did this religiously. And so did Carnegie. Every day, as I reviewed my goals, my mind became sharper, more focused, more relentless. But it's not just about goals. It's about identity. What you write shapes who you are becoming. Every line, written with intention, reconfigures your brain. And that's how a new version of you is born. Not in big leaps, but in small repetitions. Repetition is the mother of transformation. Write, affirm, visualize, repeat. Until you no longer have any doubt about who you are, what you want, and where you are going. And here comes another crucial point that I conveyed to Hill. Cycles of progress are not linear. They are spirals. Sometimes you go up, sometimes it seems like you are going back, but in fact you are going up at a different angle. The key is to keep going. Don't stop when you hear silence. Don't stop when you hear criticism. Don't stop when it seems like nothing is happening, because that is precisely when the universe is testing your consistency. Hill heard many no's. He went hungry. He was ignored. His writing was rejected. But he kept going. And that is why his name echoes to this day. You need to learn to love the process, to become friends with routine, to find pleasure in repeating the basics. Because those who despise the basics will never see the fruits. Great men do the same simple things every day with increasing excellence. They study, they write, they plan, they evaluate, they correct, and they repeat. This is the dance of progress. Hill noted that all the millionaires he interviewed had one habit in common: reading. They all read. Every day, obsessively. That's why I say, invest in books. Invest in applied knowledge. Invest in your mind as if you were building the foundation of a skyscraper. The higher your ambition, the deeper your mental foundation must be. And that is built with constant study. But not just any study. Focus on learning what can be applied, what generates action, what changes decisions, and above all, what reinforces your long-term vision. Because a man without vision is a slave to the present. He lives from one emergency to the next. He puts out fires instead of building, and in the end, he dies rich in occupation and poor in legacy. Hill knew that legacy was not a nice idea. It was a daily commitment. And that is the question you need to ask yourself now. What kind of legacy am I building? What will my name represent when I am gone? And, more importantly, how am I building that legacy today? With every choice, with every word, with every morning. If there is one truth that the weak cannot bear to hear, it is this: no one owes you anything. The world is not unfair. The world is exact. It gives you back exactly what you put into it. And the reason so many live below their potential is simple: they expect too much and decide too little. Hill learned early on that waiting is a trap. Time does not heal. Time only amplifies. It amplifies ignorance or wisdom. It amplifies fear or faith. It amplifies mistakes or successes. And only those who understand this begin to treat each day as an investment, not as a lottery. I told him, in no uncertain terms, the man who controls his own time controls his own destiny. And that principle became an unshakable foundation in his philosophy. Because there is no lasting success without relentless time management. I'm not talking about filling your schedule, but filling your life with non-negotiable decisions. And that's what you need to understand now. Every minute wasted is a piece of your construction that crumbles. Every distraction you accept is sabotage in disguise. Every yes given to something that doesn't lead you to your purpose is a no given to your greatness. Hill saw this in the eyes of men who achieved what they wanted. They weren't nice about their schedules. They were brutal. They knew how to say no. They knew how to cut out the excess. They knew how to organize their day around what really mattered. And you know what else? They understood that there is no freedom without structure. That's right, the freedom you seek, financial, emotional, strategic, begins with strict discipline. Chaos has never produced greatness. Impulse has never built an empire. So if you still pride yourself on being a multitasker, stop now. The world does not reward the busy. The world rewards the effective. And effectiveness requires absolute focus. Hill learned to put into practice the motto I passed on to him. Concentration is my motto, first, last, and always. Everything I have achieved has been the result of absolute concentration on a single industry, steel. I didn't spread myself thin, I mastered it. And only after mastering it did I expand. That is the code that few have the courage to follow. But focus isn't enough. It takes courage. Courage to act when no one else believes. Courage to persist when everything seems to be falling apart. Courage to be ridiculed for a dream that's too big. I told Hill, looking him straight in the eye, success will always seem like madness to the weak. And you, my friend, need to decide which side you're on. Because the world will try to convince you to scale back your dreams, to fit in, to give up, but you're not here to live in a box. You're here to build what has never existed, and that requires a builder's mindset. The builder doesn't complain about the clay. He turns the clay into bricks. The builder isn't intimidated by rain. He works while others wait for the sun. The builder doesn't need an audience. He needs a plan. And Hill understood this perfectly. That's why every time life pushed him down, he responded by building more. He learned, he adjusted, he reinvented himself. He didn't look for shortcuts. He looked for fundamentals. And that made him unbreakable. You need to stop looking for motivation and start looking for structure. Motivation is fleeting. Structure is permanent. And if you're still living on emotional highs, you're sabotaging yourself. You need a clear plan. Visible goals, daily habits, weekly reviews, strategic silence, and above all, a command mentality. Because you're no longer in survival mode. You're in construction mode. And those who build cannot stop at every headwind. I taught Hill that winds are not obstacles, they are tools. The wise pilot adjusts the sails. And so should your life be. Adjust the sails, correct the course, but never, ever stop sailing. Inertia is the greatest enemy of prosperity. The comfort zone is the grave of potential, and a routine without purpose is the most lethal poison for the entrepreneurial soul. So, if you feel like you're stuck, know this: the problem isn't the world. It's the absence of a living plan. A living plan is one that breathes with you. It adapts, evolves, challenges, and for that, you need constant review. Hill did this religiously. Every Sunday, he reviewed his week. He corrected mistakes, he reinforced successes. He planned his next steps. And you know why? Because he understood that success is a ladder. And no one climbs a ladder looking up at the sky. You climb step by step, rung by rung, looking where you step, firmly, consciously, with rhythm. And here's something I want to drill into your mind. Rhythm is more important than speed. Repeat after me: rhythm is more important than speed. Because those who run too fast, without direction, burn out. But those who move forward a little every day, in the right direction, build what seemed impossible. It is rhythm that builds empires. It is rhythm that strengthens habits. It is rhythm that creates resilience. And speaking of habits, Hill learned that all identity is shaped by repetition. You don't become disciplined overnight. You become disciplined by practicing discipline. You don't become confident by decree. You become confident by acting with courage before you feel ready. Action precedes emotion. Habit precedes transformation. And environment shapes habit. So protect your environment. It is the soil for your seed. A toxic, chaotic, or scattered environment sabotages even the most brilliant plan. And a clean, focused, disciplined environment enhances even a simple idea. Hill took care of his environment as one would take care of a sacred laboratory. And you should do the same. Organize your home, define spaces for creation, get away from the noise, and create a fertile mental territory where your greatness can flourish. You don't need more courses. You need more silence. You don't need more content. You need more commitment. You don't need more opinions. You need more execution. And it all starts today. It starts now. Not with big changes, but with small decisions. A different morning, a block of time that is non-negotiable. A goal notebook, focused reading. A clean environment, a stated purpose, and a routine repeated with honor. Because when you honor your routine, the universe begins to honor your results. And then, the impossible begins to seem inevitable. You've made it this far, and that already puts you among the few. Because most people give up when they feel the weight of the truth. Most people run away when they realize that success requires discipline. But you stayed. And that tells me something. You're ready to abandon the ordinary life. Ready to take charge. Ready to join the select group of men and women who aren't content to just exist. They build. And it was at this point in the journey that Hill began to understand one of the most profound lessons I shared with him. Wealth is not an end, it is a tool, an instrument, a resource for fulfilling a greater mission. Money alone is fragile. It is an excellent slave, but a tyrannical master. And that is why so many who accumulate wealth remain poor in spirit. They win in the bank, but They fail in personal fulfillment because they didn't understand that real prosperity is spiritual. It's strategic, it's generous. Hill said it bluntly. The man who dies rich dies miserable. And I'm not just talking about accumulated money. I'm talking about a life wasted on accumulation without cause. Because true glory lies in multiplying, yes, but in distributing wisely, in lifting others up, in leaving a legacy that continues to have an impact long after you are gone. Hill understood that philanthropy is not charity. It is strategy. It is social construction with purpose. And if you seek greatness, you need to start thinking like a builder of futures. That's why your business, your leadership, your decisions need to be anchored in a purpose that transcends the ego. Making money is easy. Millions of fools have done it, but building something that transforms generations, that's for the rare few, for those with a non-negotiable mission, for those who live not just to win, but to serve, and to serve with excellence, with vision, with structure. Because generosity without wisdom is wasteful, and wisdom without action is cowardice. Hill once asked me, "What is the secret to building great teams?" I replied, "Choose men better than yourself." That phrase changed the way he viewed leadership. Most people try to control. They try to be the smartest person in the room. And that's why they fail. True leaders build armies of giants. They surround themselves with the best. They promote those who deliver. They cut those who hold back. And they create cultures where excellence is not an option, it's the only currency accepted. Do you want to climb the ladder? Learn to delegate. And delegating is not abandoning. It's trusting with strategy. It's transferring responsibility with criteria. It's supervising with clarity. Hill learned that the greatness of an empire lies in the strength of its commanders, and every man I interviewed, from tycoons to inventors, knew this. They hired for talent, promoted for results, and fired for mediocrity. There was no room for amateurs, and you shouldn't tolerate it around you either. But be careful, leading is not shouting. Leading is inspiring by example. It's living the culture you demand. It's being the first to arrive and the last to abandon the mission. It's taking full responsibility. No excuses. No outsourcing. No could. Hill saw this in every success story he documented, and it reinforced a principle that had been mine since my early days in the industry. The leader is the last to eat. The leader is the first to act. And the leader is always the most responsible. And here comes another lesson you need to absorb deeply. Never compromise your principles, ever, even when it seems advantageous, even when everyone else is doing something different. Because character is the most valuable asset a person can have. And without it, no victory is worth it. I have turned down deals, broken partnerships, left millions on the table, all to maintain one thing, my integrity. And it was that integrity that attracted the best people to me, because great people recognize greatness, and they join forces with those who have integrity. Hill, throughout his life, was also tested, and he stood firm, because he understood that every choice shapes destiny, and that every small ethical deviation is a nail in the coffin of greatness. Do you want to win? Start by being honest, even when no one is watching. Keep your word, deliver more than you promise, and never, ever sacrifice your values for immediate gains, because the price of peace with yourself is non-negotiable. Now, listen carefully. All of this only works if you take action. Clarity without action is an illusion. Inspiration without movement is anesthesia. Knowledge without execution is vanity. Hill didn't just write things down. He applied them. He tested them. He adjusted them. He went back. And that's why he built what he built. That's why his work touched millions. That's why we're here today, you and me, rescuing this code to change your life. But this change will not come from me. It will come from you. And it will only happen when you stop collecting videos and start collecting decisions. When you get out of spectator mode and into doer mode. When you get up from your chair, grab a piece of paper, write down your purpose, map out your week, review your actions, change your morning routine, cut out distractions, and take charge of your own construction. You already know what you need to do. Now you just have to do it. And that is the real turning point. Those who do, build. Those who procrastinate, disappear. And I, Andrew Carnegie, am here to remind you, you were not born to disappear. You were born to leave your mark. Marks so deep that even decades later, your name will still be synonymous with transformation. And now, we have reached the end of this session. But understand, this is not the end of your journey. On the contrary, it is the beginning of your mission. Because after everything that has been revealed, after everything that has been unearthed from the depths of your soul, there is no turning back. Either you decide to transform your life now, or you consciously choose to return to the cycle of stagnation. And remember, not deciding is already a decision. And almost always, it's the wrong decision. Hill understood this. When he left that conversation with me, he didn't just have a challenge, he had a responsibility. To me, no. To the world, no. The responsibility was to himself, to his future, to his name, and he honored it. Not because he was special, but because he was determined, and you have that same chance now. Nothing we've talked about here is theory. Everything is applicable, and everything depends solely on your willingness to break through. Break through the passive, complacent, distracted, and weakened version of yourself, and take on, once and for all, the constructive version, the strategic version, the Carnegie version that lives within you, even if it's still dormant. You need to understand that you are no longer waiting for a miracle. You are the miracle. And all this knowledge delivered here is the lever. But the strength to move it must come from within. And it will only come when you abandon any alternative plan that is not your greatness. Plan B is the silent killer of excellence. And the world is full of cowards who hide behind if it doesn't work. You will no longer be one of them. Take on your defined primary purpose today. Write it down clearly. Declare it firmly. Honor it with daily action, not for me, not for Hill, but for you. Because you deserve a life of building, not surviving. You deserve the silence of peace, not the noise of doubt. You deserve to wake up every day with clarity of direction, intensity of movement, and lightness of soul. And that will only be possible when you stop running away from yourself. I built my fortune on steel, but the true foundation of my life was not iron, it was purpose. It was faith, it was discipline, and it was the mission to lift others up as I climbed. Because the real ladder to success is not climbing alone, it is lifting others up as you climb. That is the mission. That is the legacy. That is the only victory that is truly worth it. And so, I say to you, with all the authority that a life of achievement can give, you have everything you need. Nothing is missing. All that's missing is decision. All that's missing is focus. All that's missing is action. Do it, start now. Use this video as your ground zero, the beginning of a new era in your story, and if this message resonated with you, then share it, not because it's beautiful, but because it's necessary. Someone you know needs to hear this. Someone is about to give up, and maybe this is the spark that will rekindle the flame. Share it with courage, and subscribe to this channel, because this journey is just beginning, and there is much more to be revealed. You are not alone. You are walking with giants, and now, it's your turn to become one of them.